Her name is Grazia Ravelli. She's well-being and performance coach, and she will tell us how to prevent or how to keep our mental health in a good state. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Grazia. I am your well-being and performance coach for the next 30 minutes. To tell you the truth, this talk is the exact opposite of what I do for a living. I usually am the one who listens and doesn't do much of the talking. And usually my coaching sessions are a little bit more intimate. It's a one-on-one rather than a 1-to-50. So you pardon me being quite nervous. And what I do is that I meet with people that encounter a blockage, a problem, a point where they get stuck. And I just listen carefully to what they have to say. I try to follow their thoughts. And then I ask them some pointed questions to help them gain a different perspective on this problem that they've got. So when they asked me to deliver this talk, I was like, wow, this is a real flipping of roles here. And I've decided to organize this talk in a quite interactive way, similar to a coaching session. So hopefully by the end of it, you walk out with one or two practicable things that you can actually put in place to look after yourself a little bit better. And because I'm Italian, I thought I needed to make this interactive. And the way we're going to interact is through hand gestures, because you're already seeing I'm moving my hands a lot. So for the brave ones of you, I'm going to ask you to communicate with me using the iconic Italian gesture of the pinched fingers. Okay? So I've seen some of you already practicing. Fantastic. All right. So let's kick it off. And I want to invite you, because we're talking about burnout and well-being, if you're really brave, to switch your phone to airplane mode or do not disturb and gift yourself the next 25 minutes of undisturbed focus just for yourself to think about how you are doing. A coaching session would always start with understanding the topic. What is it that we're dealing with? And today, the topic is quite clear. It's burnout. But what is burnout? According to the World Health Organization, burnout is not a medical condition, not yet, at least. It's an occupational phenomenon that is brought by a prolonged or repeated exposure to work-related stress. And it comes out or manifests itself on 3 different levels. It's a physical exhaustion. I can't drag myself out of bed in the morning. It's an emotional exhaustion. Either I flip for the littlest of things or I'm completely numb to what's happening around me. And these are just 2 examples. And then it's also mental exhaustion. And one of my clients summed it up quite nicely, well, unnicely for him. He said, you know, everything that's thrown at me, I think, I don't want this. So that's the topic we're dealing with today. And after understanding the topic, I always like to understand what are the reasons that we want to get a different perspective around this. The reason is in the source itself, this prolonged or repeated stress. What is stress? Actually, it's a strategy that's been ingrained into how we work as humans, because it's something that we use every day at all times. It's this ongoing adaptive process of getting into an environment, whether a physical or a situational environment, and then assessing where the nearest exit is. That's what I did when I came in here. I was like, okay, where can I run if it gets too hot? And then seeing the potential dangers, seeing the potential gains, and then adapting to it, coming up with a strategy that works best for us. So it's something that we use all the time, even if we're not aware. And in itself is no bad, no good. And for us freelancers, I know there are some unique stressors. Most of the time, we are by ourselves. We spend a lot of time in front of computers. We spend a longer time sourcing our work. We spend even more time understanding if the work is the right one for us. And then when we decide it's not the right one for us and we decide to turn it down, that takes an emotional toll on us more than it would on an employee, for example. Yet research has found that it's not how much stress we face that leads to burnout, but it's how we manage it. So give me a round of pinched fingers if you know those animals, like possums, that when they see a bigger predator, they just freeze and they fake dead. Okay, we've seen some on the Ice Age. Well, that's not just something that happens in cartoons. I'm pretty sure most of us actually fake dead as well. Over weekends, ignoring emails, notifications put on hold, I'll get back to you on Monday. That's a way that we use to counteract stress. So it's something that we put in place all the time, and that's the reason why we want to deal with it better. Once we've understood this, let's delve a little bit into understanding what our current situation is. So I'm going to, in the next slide, there's going to be a question for you. And I just invite you to pay attention to what your mind comes up with. Your mind will probably give you one or two answers. Just pay attention to what it comes up with. If you were able to disappear for a whole month, and you will still get paid for it, so no stress, what is the thing that you would be most glad to be away from? Perhaps is, apologies, that really annoying client. Perhaps is somebody closer to you in your family. Perhaps is that big project that's daunting on you. Whatever answer you gave yourself, that's probably the biggest source of stress in your life right now. Or it is the one that your mind wants you to believe it is. Since this is a group session, I'll ask you to hold that thought and work with it individually. If you want to shout it out loud, I'm Italian and I do loud voices too, so you're more than welcome to do that. Let's continue with this self-assessment. We found what our main source of stress is, but how stressed are we? Are we just stressed? Are we worried? Are we burnt out? I'm going to give you a self-assessment scale, which is being put together from a renowned psychologist. So it's not one that I put together. Need to give them credit. Just read it through. There are 1 to 12 stages. And ask yourself, is this happening to me right now? Does this resonate with me in relation to that big source of stress or work in general? Try to do that without judging yourself and be quite honest about it. if you think, or if you saw a description that struck a chord with you, you're most likely to be on the burnout spectrum. And as a spectrum, it's got a start and an end. So it's something that develops. And for the brave ones of you, you could even shake your pinched fingers in the air if you think you're on this spectrum right now. So, oh, there we go. Wow. Shout out to you guys. What you just did is very important. It's telling the group that burnout is something that can happen, that does happen. It happens to most of us. You just normalized it. So I want to give a shout to you for doing that. And I also would like us to discover some strategies to heal or avoid crashing onto these walls. How are we going to do that? There are a lot of tools out there on the internet. I almost burnt out from doing all of the research for this talk. I was like, wow, so many. And I thought, well, if I talk about them all or a few of them, what's the point? Everyone has got a different situation. And perhaps at the end of the talk, you would walk out thinking, wow, there was a lot. I don't even know where to start. So today, we are taking this baby step approach. We're just going to go with one tool. Nice and easy. We'll just make a small step. Can you guys guess what this tool is? No? Okay. Unfortunately for us, it's not pizza, but it's something that we all can tap into at any point of our day and nights. And that's called awareness. If we don't know how much battery we've got left, mentally, emotionally, and physically, we're not even going to recognize that we may be slipping towards burnout. We may not recognize that we simply do not have more in the tank to go. And if you think that this is quite hairy-fairy and fluffy things. Now we're going to make this count, especially with numbers. Imagine you are a car. Which car would you like to be? For the sake of this exercise, and because I'm wearing black, I'll be a Lamborghini, just because it's the first black car that comes to mind. And I don't want to be a Fiat. Cars, just like us humans, have got two systems. There's the gas pedal, and that is what happens to us when we are working or we are looking for work. We just show up, we just fight for our party, or then perhaps we freeze because the project is too big or a lead is not proceeding. Anyway, we just try to give it all to secure work. And we've also got another system that is the brake system. And it's the brake system that actually makes the ride quite fun. Because even if you're a Lamborghini and you're slamming it on the gas, if there's a curve or an unexpected event coming at you, you're just going to crash into that wall. If you engage your brakes, then you're going to slide, and then you can press on the gas again, and that becomes more fun. What is this brake system for us human? It's called the rest and digest system or parasympathetic system, and it has to do a lot with recovering, taking breaks, staring outside of the window for a couple of minutes rather than sending out another email or responding to their notification. But again, this comes back to the whole tool. So let's keep understanding how aware we are of these two systems. So think in percentage. Out of 100 of your time, how much time do you spend slamming on the gas and try to go forward with your work? And how much time do you spend using the brakes sometimes? Perhaps is 100 to 0%. Perhaps is a 50-50. Perhaps you're really good and you've got a 60-40. What does it add up to you? And again, because it's a group session, I'm not going to ask anyone, unless we've got volunteer. I hate voluntold. I work for a company that's called Peak Path, and we coach high performers in fast-paced industries. We interviewed more than 1,000 of them to understand what makes the difference for them to live in that upright corner, in the peak performance zone, where they can show up consistently, sustainably, at the best of their abilities. And we discovered that only 11% of them are actually living in this zone sustainably over a long time. And that comes down to two factors. One is the motivation, that's the vertical axis. And I guess that we as freelancers are quite motivated to build up some meaningful work, some fun work, get more clients, get more turnover. The second factor is the horizontal axis, and that's the mental fitness. What is it? It's our ability to think clearly and take effective decisions. Basically, it's how aware we are of the situation in front of us, is how aware we deploy that stress system of getting into an environment, reading it, and then acting accordingly. Well, if your mental fitness or awareness is quite low, and you're not really motivated to work, then you're probably going to quit it at some stage. If you're still very motivated, but do not have that awareness sharpened up, then that is what is leading you or us towards burnout. So we've understood the topic, we've understood why it's important, we've hopefully understood what our current situation is. Next up, how do we fix this? The solution. Well, as a coach, I usually don't give solution, but I make you work for finding your own. And in this, I've got the best job in the world, I guess. I just make you do the heavy lifting. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to need you to show me a round of pinch fingers. How annoying do you find it when your clients constantly ping you about different things? Hey, you needed to send me that invoice, also that mock-up, and by the way, I asked you for a referral, and we've got a meeting in 15 seconds. Can you join? I saw some hands in the air. That's quite annoying, isn't it? My job as a coach is to bring you to new perspectives. So, quite honestly, to which extent are you doing the same to yourself? To which extent are you jumping from one thing to the other? Oh, geez, I needed to send that file by yesterday. And I also need to rush out from the door in 3 minutes straight to pick up the kids at kindergarten. But there's also that important meeting they want me to be in on 15 seconds, so maybe I can squeeze it in between the 15 seconds and the 3 minutes. And I've also got 50 notifications on Slack that I still need to open. So I saw some head shaking, and I'll take them for this. How do we fix this? Ask yourself, if you could be your most ideal client, one that doesn't constantly ping you, who would you like to be? Feel free to pull up the notes on your phone and brainstorm about how you want to handle communications. How many times per day do you want to check your notifications? How much focus time do you want to reserve to work on a specific project? Or just make a list in mind. You see, our imagination is the most powerful tool. I, as a coach, work with the assumptions that you already have the solutions, but sometimes this solution is buried under the narrative, the story that we tell ourselves, the excuses that we come up with. So if we remove all of the excuses, and you could show up as your most ideal client, who would you be? The brainstorming that hopefully you'll have done is, let's call it your list number 1. And that's the ideal outcome. However, we live in a very material world, so we need to make it realistic. How do we get there? By understanding that every time that we say yes, we're also saying no to something else. If I say yes to jumping on the meeting that's going to last 2 minutes and 45 seconds, what am I saying no to? Perhaps I'm just saying no to taking a nice walk to pick up the kids from kindergarten and lower my stress levels. If I'm saying yes to sending that invoice before I reconciled everything else, what am I saying no to? Probably I'm saying no to working quite effectively. It's a double flip of the coin at all times. And what we need to do is to start understanding where our boundaries are. So I invite you to pull up the notes of your phone and start to get quite pragmatic. We're going to do a list number 2. This is fun. What are things that you want to say no to? Perhaps is saying no to having meetings back-to-back. Perhaps is saying no to going 4 weeks without going for a run or working out, because you do notice that then it weighs on you. Perhaps is saying no to working till 9 p.m. and saying yes to stopping at 6. Where would you like to start placing your boundaries? It works best with our mind if we think in negative. That's how our mind is wired. And that's where we usually, the first point of touch is there. No, I don't want this. I can't stand that. And it's useful to use how our mind works, because then we can always flip it back to what we want. So whether you wrote down your list or whether you made a mental list, the next step would be for you to choose one small thing to get started on. What is the smallest things, the tiniest things that you can start changing going forward to gain more awareness, to break a little bit more often? Does anyone have any idea? Pizza. Always a good idea. Thank you. Not compromising on taking breaks for working out. Yeah, absolutely. So how does that look like practically? How do you get yourself not to compromise? Most of the questions that I ask is, how will you remember? because it's quite nice to say that, but then we revert back to our standard operational mode. So how do you remember to take breaks to exercise? It could be a calendar placeholder. It could be paying in advance for 10 PT sessions, so I really have to show up. Otherwise, the PT will come and drag me out of the desk. You know, there are so many different ways in which you could do that. But first of all, we need to commit. So whether you commit to yourself or whether you commit to the person sitting next to you, or you send a text message now to your partner, close friend, your boss if you have one, your fellow freelancer, feel free to take a commitment today on getting started on this small thing to gain more awareness. Just before I showed you that slide with so many tools. And they're all very valid tools. They are backed up by scientific studies too. And I didn't want you to walk out of here without having them. So I've put them, a few of them, in a guide. You can scan the QR code, download the guide. It's quite practical. It gets the commitment part in there too, but there's also a part for self-accountability, which is going to help you make this change consistent over time. And other than that, I've got no idea what time it is, and if I've got more time or if I'm finishing up too early, but that was it, and I want to thank you very much. Was I too fast, like a Lamborghini?
It was fast, yeah, we're early, but it's fine.
I decided to be a Lamborghini today.
Italian. Perfect. We don't have any questions so far because they heard you say, please switch off your phones and focus on yourself.
I know,
that's a good
right?
one. So
Best
if you have any questions,
ever.
you can now quickly type them into Slido. It's no problem.
Or
There's
shout
just
them
a
out.
comment, by the way, from a biologist who says you should really be cautious about the stress because the constant stress really takes a toll on your body and life expectancy. So it's just like...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As a matter of fact, the company I work for, we get our clients to wear wearable devices that record stress levels, and then we show them back to them when they're sitting down, so it's a safe environment. And most of the time, the actual seeing the stress levels in itself, it's quite revealing, if not shocking, and that's what could be triggering some changes. So if you want to go in and go hard, then start measuring your stress levels and then check them.
I was also thinking about, you know, there's always this circle that we want to do the best for our clients, and then they send an email at, I don't know, 9 p.m. or something, and want still some changes or something, and you're like, we always have the pressure to like do the best. How do we get out of this circle? Because I think that's like, yeah, the most dangerous thing for our mental health.
It's always quite difficult to respond to these questions because usually it's me asking the questions. And if I get a question, I ask another question back. But I'm not going to do that today. There isn't a size-fit-all answer. But what I'm noticing more and more in my work is that it comes down to where we set our bars for expectations, mainly on ourselves. It's quite normal to have this tendency to do really, really, really good work, borderline imperfection work. And that's a fantastic tendency to have. But again, it comes down to the awareness of understanding when can I be near perfection, and will I ever be near perfection? I guess the question is no. And how much is good enough? I've never heard a client telling me, but I didn't respond to that 9 p.m. email, and the following day, the word ended. They still got back to the client maybe at 9 a.m. the following morning because they faked dead like a possum. And perhaps their way of responding was not perfect, but it was good enough. So most of the time is really to lower down a little bit our self-expectations and on the others too.
Here's a question from Eric. What is your personal favorite thing to say no to?
My personal favorite thing is saying no to short sleep night. I'm very good at sleeping. It comes naturally to me. But again, based on data that we're collecting, we're seeing that sleep is perhaps the #1 factor that helps us recharge our battery, both mentally, emotionally, physically. So I've started to say no to late nights and favor them for long night of sleeps. But yeah, that's my personal favorite. And again, in coaching, it comes a lot to what your favorite is.
Okay. That fits a bit to my question before. Why don't companies have empathy or realize when they are being unrealistic or creating a high stress level for resources? And what is the best way to make them realize it?
That's a fantastic question. I don't have the answers as to why. But there is a reason why we talk about fast-paced environments, right? It comes down to that velocity of operations, of wanting to see return on investments and wanting to see profits. How do we make them realize? I guess that's comes back to setting your boundaries and setting your own expectations and be able to say, well, these are my operating hours and systems, and I will show up in that 11% upright corner of the diagram that I showed if I grant myself enough space for looking after myself. So perhaps making a case of, do you want me to be at my peak once and then fall? Or do you want me to be at my peak on a sustainable level and something that the company can benefit from as well?
Any tips for when you enjoy your career but work is demotivating because reasons like poor management from client, but it's too hard to find new clients?
Okay. Well, that's a complex. It's got a lot of layers, right? At the end of the day, stress, as I mentioned before, is neither good nor bad, but it's the meaning that we attach to it, right? I think that focusing on the positives, on our passions, for example, I really like my job, I really like my task, focusing on that will trigger more positive thoughts and more positive actions. It sounds scary, but if you start from your passions, from your positives, then your ability to read the room and the situation is going to attach a positive meaning to it, and you're probably going not to freeze or fake dead, rather to engage both the gas pedal and the brake too.
How do I fight with my inner saboteur when I'm already delivering good quality work?
Well, let's normalize this. We are able to deliver good, really good, perfect work and still have inner saboteurs, inner demons, right? It's a lifelong journey. I don't have, again, a one-size-fits-all. However, the awareness of when your saboteurs are interjecting you. You could even name them. I named my saboteur Paula. So anytime that I hear, oh no, I'm not good enough for this, I'm like, oh, just Paula, shut up. It's creating some distance from that part of you that is there to protect you, most probably, but it's doing that in a way that doesn't really serve you anymore. So try to create some distance by either saying, oh, that's my saboteur coming at play now, by naming it, by having a picture for it, by having a special voice for it. Can be creative with it.
It's common that companies fire someone and blame it on performance, but it's burnout. What should an employee do about it?
Well, first of all, look after yourself. Try to heal. That is the most important thing. Burnout, we saw, is a scale. It's a gradient. And as it builds up, then it takes time to build down. So the most important thing here is to look after yourself. Secondly, learn from it. It's environmental, but it also speaks to our capacity or lack of thereof to be aware of when we are slamming on the gas pedal too much and when we are not engaging the brakes enough. So without any judgment, quite transparently, just ask yourself, what can I learn from it? Where can I find a place, meaning a company, some colleagues, some clients that resonate best with me, that are more similar to that ideal client that you would like to be.
Mm-hmm. And the last one, how do I overcome procrastination?
Again, a lot of tools out there. One of them is setting small goals. So really, I have to send that invoice I've been sitting on for the last 30 days. But I need to do a massive reconciliation for it. Do not set your goal at, okay, when I have reconciled everything, then I'll send it off. Set a small goal. Okay, first of all, I need to open an Excel spreadsheet. Great. Then celebrate this step. Wow, I did it. Fantastic. Great. Now I'm going to get a cup of tea and I'm going to relax because I don't want my stress levels to shoot up. Behind procrastination, there's most of the time, but it's a big generalization again, fear of failure. And this fear of failure is protecting us by interjecting it as it can, right? So setting your success level at a level that is achievable is going to build up that confidence that we need step by step to then overcome it. Okay. But again, this is a generalization. Each one of us is a whole story in itself. So what I'm saying now could work for most of you and could not work for the majority as well.
Okay. There's still some questions left, but I think you're sticking around, so maybe the people can come over and ask these questions personally if
Absolutely.
it's fine for you.
Approach me like this. I
this.
know what it's about.
Thank you so
awesome.
much,
Thank
Grazia.
you so much for your time.
It was amazing. Thank you.